Hey everyone, in this video I will be discussing my very first impressions, a little bit of guidance and reviewing of Nilou and how exactly to play her, because let me tell you what, she is a very complicated character to get your head around. So I will be trying to put this into young Razore language so that you guys can understand exactly what's going on, because if we take a look at her constellations and her talents, let me hide my webcam so you guys can see this, she is an essay. If you take a look at all of this, she is a complete and utter essay to understand how to play. So let me try and make this as easy as possible for each and every one of you watching, as I myself try to learn exactly what's going on. So the first things first is going to be Nilou is going to be a hit points based character. As you can see, she has over 70,000 hit points with the build that I have her on. This is going to be her signature weapon at refinement rank 1. Artifacts I've gone for are Tenacity of the Millilith and Emblem of Severed Fate. However, there are multiple different artifact combinations or sets that you can be running on her and you should be considering, and I will touch on that towards the second half of the video. Constellations are going to make quite the difference on her, and then of course we have got her talent level 6, 8 and 8. Where do we begin? Nilou's elemental skill has two different variations. You can do elemental skill, elemental skill, elemental skill, elemental skill, and that will trigger her supportive ring effect, or you can do elemental skill and then you click your mouse button or whatever is your normal attack button, and Nilou will start firing off these water blades, which look very cool, and it will convert her normal attacks into doing hydro damage, which seems very cool. The downside is, unfortunately, she does not actually do a lot of damage. As of now, she does not do a lot of damage, and I cannot recommend playing that playstyle, even though it looks super cool. There are definitely ways to make it work. However, there are many pieces to this jigsaw puzzle that is Nilou that are required to make her really function, and this is likewise to her supportive form. So this is going to be her elemental skill, elemental skill, elemental skill, and elemental skill once again, and now she has a ring around her which will apply the wet status to any enemies that it comes into contact with, which allows you to do very easy bloom reactions. Now the main caveat of Nilou is going to be her talent, which is her Ascension talent, Court of Dancing Petals. When all characters in the party are all Dendro or Hydro, and there is at least one Dendro character and one Hydro character, including Nilou, the completion of the third dance step of Nilou's dance or her elemental skill will grant all nearby characters the Golden Chalice's bounty for 30 seconds upon its completion. So essentially, if you finish the third step, as you can see, you've got 3 rings above her, and now you completed it, and now you've finished, and that symbol above her head is gone, and you've activated either her first dance or her second dance, so the water slashes or the ring around her, you will then activate this additional buff coming from Court of Dancing Petals called the Golden Chalice's Bounty, and this lasts for 30 seconds. Characters under the effect of Golden Chalice's Bounty will increase the elemental mastery of all nearby characters or allies if you're in co-op by 100 for 10 seconds whenever they are hit by Dendro attacks. Also triggering the bloom reaction will create bountiful cores instead of Dendro cores. Such cores will burst very quickly after being created, and they have larger area of effects. Bountiful cores cannot trigger Hyper Bloom or Burgeon, and they share an upper numerical limit with Dendro cores. Bountiful core damage is considered damage dealt by Dendro cores produced by Bloom. Should the party not meet the conditions for this passive talent, any existing Golden Chalice's bounty effects will be cancelled. That is very confusing. So this part here is going to confuse a lot of people. So what exactly does this mean? This means you need to be hit by Dendro attacks. Dendro attacks have to hit your own character for you to obtain this buff. And you might be asking, well, how do you do that, Atsu? Well, for those of you who didn't know, when you do a bloom reaction, when you use bloom or the bountiful cores, which I'm about to show you here, you are actually going to take damage from the explosion. That's right, guys, you are going to be self-inflicting damage to yourself when you do a certain reaction here. Now let me show you a normal bloom reaction, which is going to take 6 seconds, and then I'll show you a bountiful core reaction, which will be instantaneous. So the first thing that we are going to do is we'll drop this down, and we'll drop this down. So as you can see, there is now a bloom. There are blooms on the ground here, as you can see, and they take a very long time to explode. Very long time to explode, and they don't really do too much damage depending on who you're playing with. So let's do that again. We have another bloom here. We'll have another bloom here, okay? So that bloom, as you can see, actually dealt dendro damage to me. It's going to explode here, and it will deal dendro damage. Now, when you use Nilou, let's teleport away here. When you use Nilou and you complete her dance steps, and you activate the buff on yourself, or you activate the buff on her, she will now give this instantaneous bloom called the Bountiful Cause, and they do a lot more damage. So let me show you guys here. We'll do 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So now we have the ring around us, and if we do that with the Traveler, as you can see, 26,000 down, or 27,000 damage, I should say. And as you can see, the explosions are... Oh, don't die, don't die! The explosions are instantaneous. So Nilou, within this composition, within this very niche team comp of having only Dendro and also Hydro characters, can help you do a fair amount of reaction damage, as long as you have a lot of Elemental Mastery on your other characters, which is where her signature weapon comes in handy as well. But now we're going on lots of different tangents here, so that might be a little bit confusing. But every time you do a bloom explosion, normal bloom or the Bountiful Core bloom for Nilou, you're going to be self-inflicting dendro damage as long as you're near the bloom, and when you do that, you're going to of course be gaining Elemental Mastery, which will therefore increase the damage you're doing with that bloom damage in the first place. Now, you might be asking, Atsu, is there any way to play Nilou outside of dendro, or outside of needing Kokomi or Nahida, who is going to be in the future one of the most important characters to have with Nilou alongside the dendro main character? The answer is yes, you can. Is it going to be good? The answer is I can't tell you that right now, because maybe there's characters in the future that might make it better, but as of right now, I do not recommend playing Nilou in this manner, because it just doesn't do a lot of damage. Now, you can put artifact sets on her to help her do some form of damage like this, but it is going to be scaling off her hit points. Her weapon does not give you crit rate or crit damage, so you're going to need very, very nice substats, and most likely the set I would recommend is going to be Heart of Depth, assuming that the normal attack damage is going to scale with her elemental skill here, and the artifact set damage is also going to scale accordingly. I guess if it does, then you can also use gladiators as well. Do I recommend any of these artifact sets on her right now, though? No, the answer is no, because you're going to have very, very underwhelming damage, and I feel like that's not going to be very enjoyable if your damage is not very good. But if you really want, I do think you can run 4-piece set for this, and also 4-piece set of gladiators, or anything that is increasing your normal attack damage, especially after triggering an elemental skill, which, as you can see here, is another mini essay in itself. Moving on, weapons. Where do we begin with weapons? So, signature weapon is of course going to be the Key of Kaj Nisut, and this is going to give you a lot of HP, 66.2%, and then the passive is going to increase your HP by 20%, and when an elemental skill hits an opponent, you are going to gain this effect here, and this effect lasts for 20 seconds, the Grand Hymn effect, and it will increase the equipping character's elemental mastery by 0.12% of their maximum HP, and this effect can trigger once every 0.3 seconds for a maximum of 3 stacks. And when the third stack has activated, the elemental mastery of all nearby party members will increase by 0.2% of the character's maximum hit points by 20 seconds. So at the moment, if I do 0.2% of 72,000, I am gaining 144 elemental mastery for all my other characters, which is quite a lot. It is quite a lot. Having said that, do I recommend going for this weapon? Absolutely no, 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 no. There are other weapons you can put on Nilou. You can use Jade Cutter. It's not as good as this weapon, especially if you're going for the support function. You can put the Freedom Sworn on as well. Favonius is always going to be okay. Sacrificial Sword is also going to be decent as well. But of course, as always, the 5-star weapon here is going to be her best in slot. So once again, Freedom Sworn is usable. Jade Cutter is also usable. Iron Sting is also technically usable. I don't recommend it, but you got Favonius Sword, also going to be nice. Favonius Sword is always very nice because it gives you elemental particles, which help the whole team. And then you have Sacrificial Sword, which is also going to be usable as well. Other artifact sets, before I completely lose myself here, before I forget, if you are going for the support version of Nilou, Tenacity of the Millilith is essentially essential. You want the 2-piece set for the 20% hit points bonus. It's going to make a big difference. Emblem of Severed Fate is not necessary. You can have Elemental Mastery here as the other 2-piece in one Wanderers. You can also have the Hydro damage bonus here. You can have Noblesse here as well. You can even run 4-piece Noblesse. The main thing that you want to focus on is essentially getting as much HP as possible in Nilou, and then after that you want energy recharge, and then after HP and energy recharge you can consider elemental mastery, crit rate, crit damage as well. But as long as you are going for hit points, that is the main thing that you want on Nilou, because her hit points are going to start scaling into other characters and other characters' elemental bloom damage, which is going to be nice. The other artifact set actually that you can use on her if you want to be very funky is going to be the Deepwood Memory set, because someone on your team should be running this artifact set. You want to have Dendro damage bonus and you want to reduce enemies' Dendro resistance, so someone on the other team has to be using this artifact set so you can make the most of your Dendro damage. Now we can finally get into the gameplay after we've done this massive essay segment. Against single target bosses, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I do not enjoy playing Nilou. I do not enjoy playing this team comp. I don't like using Kokomi. If you like using Kokomi, then this might be a dream come true. Nahida or Kusanali or whatever you want to call the Dendro Archon who is incoming, I think is going to be absolutely essential to making Nilou playable in this manner where you're using her normal attacks and her normal attack string. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit tricky. We do currently need a character that has really good off-field application for Dendro, meaning that when you don't have them on the field, they are still applying Dendro, and a lot of it at that as well. Until we get that, I think Nilou is a little bit restrictive right now. If you don't want to play with Dendro and you don't want to play with Hydro characters that aren't Nilou, then yes, you're going to be slightly punished essentially, which I think is a little bit annoying, but what I think is happening here is they're experimenting, because Nilou is essentially transforming the way a certain reaction works, and she's replacing it with a new mechanic. Although it's very similar, she is replacing it with a new mechanic, and that is potentially opening the gates for something cool in the future. So hopefully I get this rotation correct. Right, let's do this, and let's try and get our energy back for the Traveler here so that we have his elemental burst. Okay, that's gonna be fine. Right, next we are going to do this, and then we're gonna do 1, 2, and 3, and then we're gonna drop this, and then we're gonna drop this, and we're gonna drop this. So this is how you are essentially going to be trying to play with the Nilou composition. So as you can see, it is very, very, very tedious, and it doesn't do a lot of damage right now unless you have your Dendro characters built. And we now have the ring back again. So here we go. Let's get ourselves the reaction damage here. So it's taking its time, but it's okay, because in the future, I believe that there will be certain characters that are going to do a lot of damage and a lot of Dendro damage. So when that eventually happens, it's going to be great. Now that showcase is not anything special. As you can see, we weren't able to one phase or one rotation. In fact, it took a long time and it seemed very tedious. We're getting knocked back. I wanted to show you guys an accurate representation of how it's going to play out against large bosses like that can't be staggered, that can't be crowd controlled, and are going to slap you around. Bloom is not meant to be to take on larger single target enemies like that. Bloom is really, really nice against enemies that are grouped up and there's multiple of them. So this domain is one of the ones where you could probably effectively showcase a little bit better, hoping that the Electro doesn't get in the way here. But Bloom is going to be a nice AoE reaction which you can utilize, and I highly do recommend you utilize it, and you try your best to make sure the explosions are taking place, 1, on yourself, and also 2, upon all the enemies when they're crowded around you. So you ideally want to use it on medium-sized enemies that will try and hunt you down, that don't easily get knocked back and aren't super spread out. Of course, there are flaws in Spiral Abyss which demonstrate this really nicely. Some of the flaws though, the enemies spawn very, very separated, which makes your life, of course, a little bit harder. Right, let's do this. Boom, 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 and then boom. And now we have the ring as well. Let's get our Dendro out. So as you can see, we're getting a lot of Bloom, but the enemies are now all split up, which is not great. We'll drop this as well. So the ring, of course, once again, as you can see, the blooms are coming out. The Bountiful Cause. We can drop this now as well. We'll do this again. Boom, boom, boom. So as you can see now, that's a lot of nice damage. That's a lot of good AoE. And when you have the Dendro Traveler's Elemental Burst and you have Nilou's Elemental Skill and the ring around you, and all the enemies are grouped around you, all the blooms will start coming out and they will start eliminating the enemies. very, very quickly. So, what is my overall summary? This video is going to be kind of short. There is a lot of stuff to go into, and once again, I always recommend checking out other content creators who are way, way, way more sophisticated when it comes to guide making. This is my first review. Do I think Nilou is a good character? I think she is like Senno. She's decent. She's not anything crazy. She's not anything game-breaking. She is very niche. She is very restrictive. If you don't want to play with Kokomi, you're going to have a hard time. If you really don't want to play with Barbara or Kokomi, it's going to be very difficult for you because we don't have a Dendro healer. We need a Hydro healer in the team, so Kokomi or Barbara has to be in your team. Unless you're really that good at the game and you don't take any damage whatsoever, you're going to need one of those characters. Realistically speaking, you need to have the Dendro Traveler in your team. If you don't want to build the Dendro Traveler, Tignaria and Kalei work. They don't work very well. Nahida is the character you're going to have to eventually pull to make the most of Nilou. I don't know what Nahida does. I don't know what Kusanali does. I don't know what she does. But I'm assuming she's going to be very good at applying Dendro. Wink, wink. So, that is my review. She is very reliant on other pieces of this big clock, and every little gear has to fall into place for her to be useful. If you don't have the other pieces, or you don't want to play her with the other pieces, you might be in for a little bit of an underwhelming time. I do think she's pretty cool. I do think this opens up opportunities for a lot of other cool mechanics to be introduced into the game. And TL didn't watch. Stats, you want to have as much HP as possible. So your artifacts, anything with the tenacity, so 2-piece tenacity plus 2-piece anything else, or whatever your substats you have, help you get as close as possible to over 65,000, ideally over 70,000 HP if I'm being honest. But if you're not going for this weapon, then you want to have at least over 60,000 hit points so that you can funnel all of your damage into this talent over here, which funnels into other damage sources, which is going to be the Bountiful Cause. So weapons wise, we are going to be looking at this as the best in stock. You can use the Freedom Sworn. You can also use the Iron Sting. You can also use the Favonia Sword. You can also use the Sacrificial Sword. That is in no particular order. I have not thoroughly tested any of these other weapons other than Freedom Sworn. I don't like it anywhere near as much as Key of Kaj'Nisut, but that is going to be her best in slot. You have Tenacity of the Millith, Emblem of Severed Fate. You can, of course, run the DPS sets if you really want to, and you insist on doing so. Go for it. At the moment, I don't recommend it. Constellations, I do not recommend going for Constellations on her. Having said that, Constellations are going to make a difference to her damage. As you can see there, 65% increase. The aura's duration is extended by 6 seconds. Constellation 1 is a big difference. I'm not going to lie about it. Constellation 1 makes a big difference. Constellation 2 is also going to make a big difference. A 35% resistance shred for both Dendro and Hydro is quite insane. It is a very good constellation. We have Constellation 3, which is just talent increase. We have Constellation 4, which is also going to be energy recharge. Likewise to Senno, it's an energy recharge constellation. And again, it's not bad at all. It is pretty good. And then Constellation 6 is kind of insane. Constellation 6 gives you crit rate and crit damage, which means you will be able to build her as a DPS character a lot easier while still maintaining all of her supportive utility, because you're going to be getting yourself 30% crit rate and 60% crit damage from her Constellation 6. It makes a very, very big difference. Her talent levels are recommended. I will go with Elemental Skill is the priority, then Elemental Burst, and then Normal Attack, depending on how you want to play her. Essentially, she's another character that will benefit from having all of them leveled up, Elemental Skill being the priority. So yes, that is my overall review and first impressions of Nilou. She is very, very niche. If you don't want to be restricted to the characters that you play with, I do not recommend rolling for her. If you really want Nilou though, nothing is stopping you. You should not let anything stop you, and I hope this has been helpful for you guys. I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful day, and bye-bye.